This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Setback today for prosecutors in the criminal conspiracy and cover-up case against Oliver North, John Poindexter and Company. A judge ruled that each defendant charged in the weapons for Iran wheeling and dealing is entitled to a separate trial. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports on the ruling and its impact.
Over the strenuous objections of independent counsel Lawrence Walsh, the judge in the Iran-Contra case ordered separate trials for former National Security Advisor John Poindexter, former NSC staffer Oliver North, arms merchant Richard Secord, and money man Albert Hakim. The judge laid blame for his decision at the door of the Capitol, saying that separation was required because Congress forced three of the defendants to testify under grants of immunity. Now each defendant has the constitutional right to use another's immunized testimony in his own defense. North, for example, could introduce Poindexter's testimony that Poindexter issued orders to North, but use of that same testimony could hurt Poindexter, hence the need to separate the cases. Walsh had argued that splitting the trials would make it harder to prove that the men conspired together to defraud the U.S. by diverting profits from Iranian arms sales to the Contras. Judge Gerhard Gesell said, "I don't need to tell you it has not been an easy task for the court to decide on 4 trials instead of 1.
Everyone recognizes that 4 trials are more burdensome than 1, but the judge's judgment was that that's a necessary requirement to protect the constitutional rights of all 4 defendants.
The defendants and their attorneys would not comment, but veteran lawyers say it's a defense victory.
Well, it's easier to prove a conspiracy case when you have several conspirators on trial together. Obviously, jurors are going to be wondering where, if there's only one man in the dock, where are the other conspirators, what happened to them?
And legal experts say that the prosecution may have more difficulty in getting convictions in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th trials because defense attorneys will have a roadmap to the case. That's why everyone will be watching carefully on Friday, the deadline Judge Gesell has set for the independent counsel to announce whether Oliver North or John Poindexter will go on trial first, Dan.
Rita, what does this do for the timetable of the cases and the possibility of pardon?
Well, what it does for the timetable is that it could mean that I spend the rest of my career covering this case. In terms of pardons, it may make things a lot harder for the President of the United States because he may have to grapple with one conviction, then there's not another conviction. What does he do about how he goes through the process of making his decisions on these cases?
Rita Braver, thanks. Governor Michael Dukakis today savored victory and endorsements from former campaign rivals, but he didn't get the big one, the one he needed most, Jesse Jackson's. Dukakis last night locked up the Democratic presidential nominations, sweeping the final 4 major primaries to get enough delegates for a first ballot victory at next month's convention. But with more than 1,100 delegates of his own, the Reverend Jesse Jackson today is more insistent about being offered second spot on the ticket and about fighting on at the convention for the Jackson agenda. This is what George Bush is hoping for given his own campaign troubles. CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton reports now on the down, dirty, and early start of the fall presidential campaign.
He lost, but you'd never know it from the mood at his headquarters last night or from the way he was talking today. He did not concede.
The nominee and the ticket must be voted on by the convention in July.
The other candidates were wishing winner Michael Dukakis well.
I will vote for Michael Dukakis at the convention and will do everything I can to advance his candidacy after the convention.
Richard Gephardt offered his delegates during a Dukakis stop in St. Louis late this afternoon.
Above all, with Mike Dukakis, what you see is what you get. And I like what I see.
Bruce Babbitt tried to phone his support during a stop at Newark Airport, but couldn't reach Dukakis.
I'll try back in about 30, 40 minutes.
The next time, it worked. But Jackson, insisting he has created a new progressive constituency on the left wing of the Democratic Party, seemed uncertain of what to do next. President?
I want the party's nomination.
Vice President?
If, in fact, the offer is made, at that time, I'll make a judgment that I've earned that option.
But nominee apparent Dukakis, at a news conference of his own, made it clear Jackson would not be an automatic choice.
There are a number of people who I think will
deserve special consideration. But this is a decision that the nominee has to make, and it's one that I look forward to making.
Jackson has ridden an emotional roller coaster this year, from long shot to surprise winner in some states to eventual loser. Some indecision about what to do next is natural. Aides say he wants to be on the short list for vice president, not necessarily to be the nominee, and that he'll press his fight on rules and platform issues, but not divisively.
Of course he's going to press his agenda, just as Dukakis is going to press his, just as probably Gephardt and Gore and some of those others are going to press theirs. That's why we have conventions.
Reverend Jackson has run a very strong, very positive campaign. It's one that has certainly earned the respect of everyone in our campaign, and I expect he will continue to do so.
Jackson has demonstrated very visibly in the past that not only is he going to be a team player, but always has been and always will be.
Jackson is taking a couple of days off to assess just where he stands. The first test of how unified all the Democrats are will come this weekend when a drafting committee begins work on the platform. Dan?
Thanks, Bruce. The Republicans made it clear they intend to go negative on Michael Dukakis very quickly. President Reagan today tried to point the way for George Bush and open a line of attack on Dukakis. The president did so while trying to play down Bush's recent moves to distance himself somewhat from some Reagan policies. White House correspondent Terrence Smith reports on George Bush's high-up campaign help.
President Reagan today gave candidate George Bush a little advice on how to overcome his deficit in the polls against Michael Dukakis. Fight back.
I'd say, George, wait till you and I get out there on the trail and start pinning him down on the things he claims, which we know are not true.
The president's suggestion of a counterattack made it clear that he is more than a little annoyed at Dukakis' success in framing the campaign issues.
You know, if I listened to him long enough, I would be convinced that we're in an economic downturn and that people are homeless and people are going without food and medical attention and that we've got to do something about the unemployed.
As for Bush, the president went out of his way today to make up for his original lukewarm endorsement.
As I say, he's been a part of everything that we've accomplished in this administration.
Lately, however, the vice president has been distancing himself from some of those accomplishments, like Mr. Reagan's Moscow embrace of Mikhail Gorbachev. The White House chief of staff thinks that tactic is understandable.
But it's only now that the vice president has taken on the additional role as the nominee of the Republican Party that he feels that he can make these statements independently, even though they may be at variance with observations or even policies of the administration. The president understands that.
The president's remarks today suggest that after months of near total absorption with other issues, he has finally begun to focus on the campaign and the realization that George Bush is behind in the polls. Terrence Smith, CBS News, the White House.
Vice President Bush is running as Ronald Reagan's vice president and rightful heir. One thing Bush has apparently inherited already is Mr. Reagan's so-called gender gap, being less popular among women voters than among men. Our chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer reports tonight on George Bush and his troubles with women.
Women. They will outnumber male voters by 10 million this year. Their vote may well decide the election. That's a big problem for George Bush because so far women don't seem to like him much.
Clearly, I will be aiming to reduce that gender gap that shows up in the polls. I like this concept of being behind in the polls. I like the idea of fighting back.
Bush's people say a lot of the problem is image. Democrats got an early start this year on issues that polls show are of concern to many women. Issues such as drugs, child care, care for the elderly. Bush, on the other hand, has often been seen in more genteel surroundings, sometimes leaving the impression he is not interested in problems of the average person.
This is not a country club election, and George Bush is not a country club candidate, and somehow that message still has to get through. He's a caring person.
Convincing voters of that, especially women, may prove difficult. The latest CBS News New York Times poll shows the vice president splitting the male vote with Michael Dukakis, but women favor Dukakis overwhelmingly, 53 to 35 percentage points, what some call a gender gulch. Mrs. Bush has been campaigning hard to turn the situation around, but some advisors say that's not enough. They want the vice president himself to do more to show he cares.
I told him, for example, he ought to trade schedules with his wife. He ought to be out there in the daycare centers.
Bush's friends are convinced that Bush's caring side will emerge eventually, but they also argue that by the fall campaign, women will want the candidates to address a much broader range of issues.
The women's vote is not a block, and to say what is the problem or the solution is to say that women all march in lockstep and doesn't give them very much credit for thinking on their own. As we get into the fall, then I think we're back to sort of the standard issues that drive presidential campaigns, which are the economy and foreign affairs.
In a sense, that is Bush's real strategy for closing the gender gap: play up administration successes on issues such as peace and prosperity, issues that have always crossed gender lines. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
Still to come on the CBS Evening News, correspondent Robert Shackney on a defeat for the chronically ill of all ages. And Harold Dow on the hair-trigger nightmare of the drug war in the streets.
I'm pretty good at baseball, but at SLR cameras, I was really green. Then I got Canon EOS, the only autofocus SLR with the green zone. The green zone makes EOS mistake-proof. Plus, EOS lenses have computers and motors built in, so anyone can shoot like a pro. Even him. Hey, you see? Canon EOS, more than autofocus, easier than ever.
Buy EOS today with no money down, low monthly payments at participating Canon dealers.
With low back pain, walking can be agony, where every step shoots pain. Up here, you know what helps? New back guard.
Clinically proven back guard is a shoe insert for low back pain aggravated by foot shock. Back guard with its shock trapper module relieves this low back pain. Watch how it helps absorb shock upon impact to reduce the shock to your back.
Amazing. Something down here can help up here.
New back guard from Dr. Scholl's. Absorb shock all day to help keep back pain away.
Captain, this itchy rash is driving me crazy.
Why didn't you use the Cord-Aid?
Cord-Aid goes beneath the skin to actually heal itches and rashes.
You know, itches and rashes won't last if you use Cord-Aid first.
It's birth control for roaches. Black Flag Roach Ender.
Other products kill, but survivors breed thousands more roaches. Roach Ender brand kills and sterilizes young survivors so they can't reproduce. Black Flag Roach Ender.
Election year policy feuds on several fronts between the forces of President Reagan and the Congress. The Senate tonight failed to override Mr. Reagan's veto of the big new trade bill, but this bill could come up again. Among other things, it would require many U.S. companies to warn workers of sudden plant closings and layoffs. The Senate did give final approval for expanding Medicare to cover catastrophic health insurance for older Americans. But tonight the House rejected another major Medicare expansion, long-term home health care, that would have cost taxpayers billions. Correspondent Robert Shackney reports on the latest explosive mix of money, Medicare, and election year maneuvering.
6-year-old Jeff Reckaway, born with a breathing disorder, needs a nurse to watch over him to make sure he doesn't die in his sleep. His parents say they are already $600,000 in debt. Maria Kinzer doesn't know how she'll be able to care for her mother as her Alzheimer's disease grows worse. It's a kind of emotional issue, help for people in desperate need that's hard for Democrats to oppose. But when it came to a congressional debate today on Claude Pepper's long-term home health care bill, some powerful Democratic committee chairmen said no.
The proposal raises expectations of the elderly that cannot be met, adding to public cynicism about this institution.
Rostenkowski and other major committee chairmen complained Pepper's bill would cost too much, $30 billion, would raise taxes, and fail to deal with other critical health care issues. Almost all the Republicans said no as well.
Are there sufficient professionals to provide the services? How do we propose to deal with nursing home care when all our funds are used up on home health care?
When you go home tonight and you close your eyes and sleep, and you ask, what have I done today to lighten the burden upon those who suffer? At least you could say, I helped a little bit today. I voted to help those who needed help.
Congressman Pepper said he had been waiting for this moment for 50 years, but his last-minute appeal was not enough. His bill lost decisively.
Usually it's politically impossible to stop Claude Pepper on an issue like this one. But this time his senior citizen lobby wasn't strong enough. 99 Democrats, his usual allies, deserted Pepper today, ensuring his defeat. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The House voted overwhelmingly today to limit commercials in children's television shows to 10.5 minutes an hour on weekends, 12 minutes per hour on weekdays. The bill still needs Senate approval. President Reagan opposes it.
Why do they call it heartburn? When it's me, your stomach, that's hurting. When antacids don't stop the pain from coming back, it could be an ulcer. It's okay, because there are treatment programs to help heal ulcers. If you think you have an ulcer, go see your doctor and ask about the available treatment programs. Sponsored by SmithKline & French, the ulcer experts. You could make your stomach very happy.
Listen to your mouth. That's the crunchy texture of a Triscuit. Now that's the delicious whole wheat taste of a Triscuit. Ooh. And that's the unique look of a Triscuit. They're made to take on any topping or no topping at all. Just listen to your mouth. Ah. That's the sound of a happy mouth. Triscuit. Listen to your mouth.
When you go shopping, you have to find the right fit, style, color.
When you do, you feel great.
But when you also find the Made in the USA label, you feel even better.
It's a great feeling.
Made in the USA!
Suddenly Salad proposes 3 exciting new leisure activities. Pasta primavera with broccoli, ranch and bacon, and Caesar with croutons.
Suddenly Salad. Suddenly Salad.
Live high.
The post-summit superpower public relations drive on arms control zipped into higher gear today. In West Germany, the U.S. Army for the first time let reporters into Pershing missile sites that are to be removed under the nuclear missile treaty activated at the Moscow summit. At the UN, Soviet Foreign Minister Shevardnadze invited member nations to witness destruction of some Soviet missile sites in the next few days. The legendary airline that pioneered commercial international flight is threatening to put itself out of existence. CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady reports.
It may be an airline flying into the sunset. The board of directors of Pan American saying the line will sell off most of its assets unless it can reach a cost-cutting agreement with unions.
If Pan Am is unsuccessful in restructuring its costs, we could see Pan Am as the major casualty of airline deregulation.
Pan Am executives would not go on camera, but to keep the line flying, they could now sell off routes, terminals, planes, engines, almost anything except the profitable shuttle service and the ground services unit. Once it ruled the skies, the first international flight, Miami to Havana, first across the Pacific and the Atlantic with luxury service. First also with jets and 747s. But it's run into stormy financial weather, losing more than $1 billion in 5 years and being hit with strikes. 2 of its unions have agreed to cost-cutting concessions of $240 million, but 3 have not. Union leaders say Pan Am's bumpy flight is management's fault.
We knew a long time ago that no matter what anybody did, or any other labor groups did, Pan Am still was hell-bent on selling off their assets because they can't make it go, because they have no marketing or operating plan whatsoever.
Some argue that Pan American may be playing a dangerous game of chicken with its unions, because analysts say the one thing the line could not weather is another strike. Dan?
Ray, the restructuring of the American economy continues. Thanks. Word today that ousted Moscow Communist Party chief Boris Yeltsin has been elected a delegate to the upcoming Communist Party conference. Yeltsin had been demoted for criticizing what he called the slow pace of Mikhail Gorbachev's perestroika reforms. But Yeltsin is still seen very much as a Gorbachev loyalist. The party conference was called by Gorbachev to push further his reform program and increase his power. Recent Soviet news reports have made it clear, however, that some prominent supporters of the reforms were not elected and will not be going to that important Communist Party conference. South Africa's military chief said today the army is mobilizing reserves to help South African forces backing rebels in Angola. He said Cuban and Marxist Angolan troops have advanced to within a dozen miles of the border with South African-ruled Namibia. The Reagan administration is hoping to get a new program off the ground for the U.S. Information Agency. It's a video version of Radio Marti's Spanish-language programming beamed at Cuba. The agency thinks that the best way to do TV Marti is to broadcast through a transmitter in a hot air balloon tethered somewhere on the East Coast. A Senate aide says $7.5 million in startup money will be attached this week to next year's budget.
If you thought you had to give up comfort to get a close shave, Norelco says, think again. Their revolutionary shaving system shaves skin close in a way that's incredibly comfortable. As the hair enters the chamber, the patented lift and cut system lifts each hair and holds it a split second before a blade cuts it. So it's possible to shave skin close without the blades even touching the skin. Norelco Rotatract. We made close comfortable.
There's more to it than meets the eye. That crunch of wheat holds a sweet surprise. Raisin in the middle, Kellogg's Raisin Squares. It's one of life's sweet surprises. That wholesome wheat turns sweet inside. Raisin in the middle, Kellogg's Raisin Squares. There's more to it than meets the eye. Kellogg's Raisin Squares and apple cinnamon squares.
When you buy Corning prescription lenses that change, it's like getting free light tints, free medium tints, dark tints, and a range of free sunglasses all in one. Corning lenses that change, the only eyeglasses you'll ever need.
Now for indigestion, gas, introducing new extra strength Malox Plus. It neutralizes more than any leading antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as new extra strength Malox Plus.
A White House spokesman today said the Reagan administration is considering new steps to crack down on drug users, including the threatened loss of student loans or driver's licenses. The Drug Policy Board, headed by Attorney General Meese, is drafting these recommendations. Sources say they are controversial even within President Reagan's own inner circle. Still, the White House feels pressure to do something with George Bush dropping in the polls and casualties in the war on drugs continuing to climb. The latter means for police and civilians alike, life on the streets of America these days is increasingly dangerous. Harold Dow has been out there.
I'm always ready. I have my hand on my weapon, although I might not have it out. It's there for my use if I need it.
For Officer Barry Wewerjack, there are no just routine calls these days. Guns and drugs have made street life so dangerous, the people who wear the badges are now feeling the tension, fear, and stress of the job.
It's not routine anymore. That car there, you don't know who's in it. You don't know what they're doing. This car, you don't know who's in it. You could have a gun in the glove compartment.
Passenger, put your palms against the windshield. Or, as officers have learned from this training film, in the trunk.
The drug situation constitutes one of the greatest sources of stress for police officers because drug dealers have become extremely ruthless in their challenges to police.
4111 North Broad Street. Somebody just got robbed.
Sergeant Alex Blair feels it in Philadelphia, too.
What are you going to find? You going to find this person who just been robbed? Is he going to be laying back there bleeding? Or is a person that did the robbery, is he going to be waiting back here to jump on you? It's just a fear that, I really hope I don't make an honest mistake that I'm penalized for later.
A mistake ain't going to bring anybody back.
This man's wife was killed on the streets of New York City last month. A police sergeant has been suspended, and 5 officers are under investigation for the shooting death of this unarmed woman after a car chase. 13 shots were fired into this vehicle when officers thought Lydia Ferraro was reaching for a gun. No weapon was ever found. The shootout was triggered when a police sergeant tried to stop Ferraro's car by firing 3 shots at the tires, a violation of department procedures.
I also feel very badly for the officers involved. But we put people in these difficult positions, and I think we have to be a little bit understanding when the stress factor perhaps gets to a point where they make a mistake.
New Orleans. A distraught guardian had to be restrained by neighbors when she learned that 16-year-old Michael Foley was shot and killed by a police officer when he refused to drop a gun. The weapon turned out to be a BB gun. New York. Police raid a suspected crack house. There was gunfire. When it was over, one cop was dead. The police commissioner told that the officer was shot by a suspect. A woman responded, "As far as I'm concerned, she should be taken out and executed. I don't care whether it's a deterrent. Kill them all and let God sort them out." But then there was some more bad news.
A complete examination of that bullet determined that the bullet was fired from a police officer's gun.
To meet the challenge that heavily armed drug dealers pose, police departments spend hours and hours practicing this deadly game. A game that may not work in reality.
Nothing goes right in real life. It never ever goes the way you plan it to go.
Police, freeze! Don't move! Freeze!
Police departments all across the country are now using computers to recreate unpredictable situations that officers may encounter. Lifelike scenarios where decisions to shoot are made and then judged.
Drop the weapon now! Drop it!
Well, the officer comes in and he sees that gun pointed at him. That's the target we want him to take out, not a civilian.
That's the way it's done in practice. But listen now as one officer describes reality.
Jesus Christ, we almost killed that guy. You know, the handle was coming back on my gun. That kid was a split second away from dying. Split second.
A split-second decision.
Police, freeze!
The challenge for law enforcement officers is to be prepared to make that life-death decision correctly when the time comes.
Freeze!
Harold Dow, CBS News, Bergen County, New Jersey.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. Bob Schieffer will be here for the next couple of nights. I'm going fishing. Good night.
11 noisy 4-year-olds. An absent assistant. And Susan Macy is left with a headache that's going from bad to worse. That's why her next move is to Metaprin. Metaprin has the same medicine as Motrin, and nothing's proven faster for relief of headache pain or any kind of pain. It's also gentler to your stomach than aspirin. Metaprin works fast when you haven't got time for the pain.
It's Lobster Fest time at Red Lobster. We know what you love the most. At our Lobster Fest, we do lobster best. No one else even comes close.
From $8.95, kids just 99 cents.
Have a tempting lobster trio, Mornay, if you're in the mood. Our tails are the best at our Lobster Fest. We know how you love seafood.
Now Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, lobster and shrimp trio, just $11.95.
If I don't get a good start in the morning, I might feel peaked. I hate that.
Wheaties, 100% whole wheat, naturally low in sugar. That's champion nutrition.
What the big boys eat.
The Remington microscreen shaves as close as a blade, or your money back. The first screen shaves incredibly close. The second even closer. Shaves as close as a blade, or your money back. Now, lowest price ever on Remington microscreen rechargeable.
Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, nuns with a financial interest in the Belmont Stakes.
Also Teddy Pendergrass and Barbara Mandrell on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS. Coming up next on Eyewitness News, we'll tell you why a drunk driving charge does not necessarily lead to a drunk driving conviction.
And we'll tell you why a lot of fish are turning up dead around the Old Hickory Dam. And we'll tell you why fanfare is not just for stars.
It's also for those who have a dream. Join us for these stories and a lot more coming up right after this.
Listen up, listen up.